the road to retirement should be an adventure, not a survival strategy. Money doesn't come with a set of instructions. The vast majority of people on this planet fall into one of two categories when it comes to money and spending. Del Sette Capital Management, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Del Sette and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, visit www.delsette.com with a hyphen between the L and the S. Hey, folks, welcome to episode 1, season 1 of the Happiness to Retirement Program podcast. I'm your host, Bill Del Sette, because the road to retirement should be an adventure, not a survival strategy. Well, thanks for joining us for this first episode ever of the Happiness to Retirement Program podcast. I thought we'd do a kickoff and talk about an Aesop's Fable that's been around for a couple of thousand years. Well, what the heck does an Aesop's Fable have to do with you and your money? Well, as it turns out, the vast majority of people on this planet fall into one of two categories when it comes to money and spending. They either, if they inherit $1 million, they'll remodel the kitchen, maybe take a trip, and then they'll bank the rest. And those people are ants. And the other set of folks are the ones that if they inherit $1 million, it's gone in a year. And those are the grasshoppers. Well, why is that? And why do we categorize people as either ants or grasshoppers? Well, an Aesop's Fable that was written over 2,000 years ago goes something like this. It was the fall, and a bunch of ants were getting ready for the wintertime, storing food and, just making sure they have enough to get through the cold times. And a grasshopper was strumming a guitar, sitting in a chair, lounging around, drinking a beer and just watching these ants work like crazy. And the grasshopper asked, "Hey, what are you doing? And why are you working so hard?" And the ant said to the grasshopper, "Hey, don't you know that winter's coming and you're not going to have enough food if you don't store your food?" And the grasshopper's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to enjoy myself, strum this guitar and enjoy this nice cerveza." And of course, lo and behold, wintertime comes and the grasshopper doesn't have enough food and goes looking for the ants and knocks on the ant hill door, if you will, and begs for food. So what's the point? Well, I'm sure there's more than one point to this fable, but when it comes to financial planning, people are either ants or they're grasshoppers, and they can actually take it to an extreme. So if you are of the ant money mindset, it's probably pretty difficult for you to spend your money. You're probably really frugal. You've done a great job saving. You've built up a nice nest egg, but you really don't spend and enjoy the wealth that much. You're just too busy either making money or doing things that maybe don't cost a lot of money. But if you're a grasshopper, well, then you probably haven't saved enough money. You may not have enough to live on in retirement. But the question remains, which is the subject of another podcast, who had the better time in life? The grasshopper who blows through the money and enjoys life, or the ant who is frugal and doesn't spend quite so much? Well, I guess that's open for debate, and no one really knows whether a person's had a better life than the other. But the difference between the ants and the grasshoppers will lend themselves to different ways of planning. The vast majority of people, for instance, that we work with, does it come as any shock to you that they are, for the most part, ants? People who work with financial planners, in my opinion, are the folks who generally are good savers, but they're not good at spending. And that sounds great, except that it creates another potential problem down the road. And that problem is that they left some money out on the table that they could have spent and enjoyed. And we break retirement down or financial independence down into three categories. the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And the reason why we do that is because generally speaking, again, and this is all research-based, people have a limited period of time in their retirement where they're healthy and very active, the go-go years. Then they hit the slow-go years, and maybe they don't spend as much money, or they are not as active. Their health maybe is starting to decline. And then they reach the no-go years where they don't do much of anything at all, activity-wise, because they can't. Maybe their health is failing. Well, as it turns out, the ants, the folks that are frugal, they could end up with a big pot of money at the end of their life that they could have enjoyed. And in fact, the way we like to do planning is we like to front load spending for folks in a methodical way that ensures that they enjoy their wealth. And as it turns out, more research points to the fact that as people age out, they gradually spend less over time. So it's a planned failure if someone dies with money that they could have spent and enjoyed. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they spend like drunken sailors, but it means maybe that they were able to gift to a charity or a son or a daughter or a grandson or a granddaughter while they are young enough to enjoy the money, if it's a son or a daughter, instead of waiting until that son or daughter is maybe 60 years old when the person dies and the son or daughter ultimately inherits that money. So there's what we call a psychic income to watching someone else enjoy the money you gifted, or helping a charity out while you are alive and not waiting until death. So as a financial planner, I spend a lot of my time counseling people, believe it or not, to spend their wealth. Now, in a methodical way. Okay, I'm not talking about going crazy and doing things that are frivolous, not at all, but in a methodical way, because it is a planned fail if you die with a pot of money that was unintentionally left behind. Now, sometimes we can't do anything about that. We can't time our death, but certainly we can create a plan for those of us that are the ant type to enjoy the money. So those are the ants. And the ants, again, are the vast majority of people that we work with as financial planners. Makes our job, in one sense, a little easier. Then in another sense, it's a bit more difficult because getting folks to enjoy their wealth is a whole other ballgame than accumulating wealth. Now, the grasshoppers, as it turns out, the grasshopper type personality, the ones who are fiddling while rain burns, or however you want to phrase it. And it's actually a whole different planning methodology that we financial planners need to use. And grasshoppers need to really make an effort to do things like save enough money to not be frivolous, to make sure that they pay themselves first. For instance, by saving 15 or 20% of their salary automatically in the form of, say, a 401k or an IRA or a Roth IRA or some combination of savings. And we like folks to save 15 to 20% of their income as kind of a rule of thumb, but it's difficult for grasshoppers to do so. They like to spend their money. They like to enjoy their money. They live in the moment. I just read an article the other day, in fact, that many younger people now are doomsday spending because of all the things going on in the world today. They're just not sure if the world's going to exist in 30 or 40 years. So they're actually spending more money now and not saving much. Well, we're optimists, and that's how we practice our planning. But with grasshoppers, it's more of a stretch where it's much more difficult to counsel those people to save more money. So if you're a grasshopper personality and you know who you are, then you're probably not saving much money. You don't really have a plan for the future. And you may not have enough to retire. In fact, your mindset may be, well, I'll never retire. I'm just going to work until I die and I'm going to enjoy all the money that I earn. Whereas an ant, again, totally different story. The ant will accumulate too much. They will be very frugal. to the point of maybe not enjoying their money as much because they're just so used to saving, and that spending is a foreign idea to them. Now, from generation to generation, my guess is there are more ants, and this is anecdotal, that maybe if your parents lived through the Great Depression, maybe they taught you to be frugal, and you remember your parents being very frugal with their money because they were colored by the events that occurred in their lifetime. And when you do not have your basic needs covered, then you can bet you're going to be frugal and you're going to make do. And that generation of folks who lived through the Great Depression and who lived through hard times and who immigrated here with nothing, maybe, that colored their money mindset. And they just scrimped and saved, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. But there needs to be a balance. But maybe if your parents lived through the Great Depression, that colored how you save money and how you spend money. On the other hand, maybe your parents were frivolous and they never really saved much, but maybe they had a great time, enjoyed themselves more with their money, and that's how you learned. Or maybe you didn't have a good role model at all and you had to kind of make it up as you go. And, money doesn't come with a set of instructions. And that's what us financial planners are here for, to maybe give you a set of instructions or help you with that. So we have the ants, again, planning concepts, set up a strategy to enjoy your wealth, to start taking money out of your portfolio in a systematic way, not in a way that depletes your portfolio before you die, ideally, right? And if you're a grasshopper, well, it's the opposite of that. And with grasshoppers, it's got to be more of a, hey, you've got to slow down your spending if you're in retirement, or you've got to save more. And it's definitely more of a counseling or a coaching situation with folks that are of the grasshopper mindset. Now, as it turns out, people fall into one of these two categories mostly, but many people are just kind of in the middle. And that's kind of the best place to be, where you're part ant and you're part grasshopper. There's enough ant in you where you know the importance of saving enough and investing correctly. And you're frugal, you're value oriented. You just don't spend for the sake of spending. You don't have credit card debt, or very little already paid off every month. But you also enjoy your life. So that balance, right? That balance of spending versus saving. Now you're saving 15% or 20% of your income, and you're still going out to eat maybe once a week, or going to the movies, or you have an entertainment budget. Of course, only after you pay yourself first and get that savings goal. But that's ideal, is kind of the balance between saving and spending. Now, again, if you're at the margin in terms of your income, meaning you have just enough maybe to for food, shelter, and clothing, let's say, well, that's a different story, and you're kind of stuck. So you're going to be more like an ant then. And if you have a lot of excess income, if you will, you might not have enough time to enjoy it. So many people who run high incomes don't have a whole lot of free time to enjoy their wealth. And of course, that's what a retirement plan is for. One of the things is to free up the time so you have what we call time affluence to enjoy your wealth. So we have ants and we have grasshoppers, and how we plan for the ants, how we plan for the grasshoppers are very different. Getting back to ants for a minute, frequently we'll set up a gifting strategy. So for the ants, they've accumulated enough wealth. Let's say they're 65 or 70 years old, and we're counseling them to spend their money down. Different mindset than accumulating wealth. But they might say, well, we have everything we need. we don't need to spend any more money on us. But maybe they have a son or a daughter, or even a grandson or granddaughter. And we'll set those folks up on a gifting strategy. And gifting strategies can reduce estate taxes down the road. But they also create what we call psychic income. And psychic income is the joy that you feel when you give money or assets to somebody or to a charity. And it's very real. And there's a saying, have you ever seen an unhappy charitable person? And if you think about that, chances are you haven't. So setting up a gifting strategy allows the donor to enjoy their wealth by giving it to a person or a charity that is near and dear to their heart. So not only does the donee win, the charity or the person, but the donor wins too. And it's a way to reduce that wealth down and be a little more like a grasshopper if you're more like an ant. So gifting strategies, very, very useful for the ant personality. There are tools that are available to help people with the gifting and get a lot of tax benefit for the buck. Something called a donor advised fund, which allows you to gift money to this fund in a large chunk if you want, get that tax benefit all in one tax year, take the deduction for that charitable donation all in 1 year, gift a stock that maybe is appreciated in value. So if you were to sell it, you would recognize a big capital gain. Well, you just gift the stock to this donor advised fund and poof, the gain disappears and you get the tax deduction for the full value of what you gave, including that gain that you never recognized on your tax return. Okay, so donor advised fund is one strategy. Another strategy is to gift to sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, up to the amount that you can gift that is below, at or below what we call the annual exclusion amount. And that's the amount that you can gift every year to a person and not have to file a gift tax return. I don't want to go too far into the weeds about this, but essentially, when you gift more than this annual exclusion amount, you have to file a gift tax return to notify the IRS that you've gone over this amount that is excluded from a potential death tax. Okay. So you can gift, set up an annual gifting strategy. Many people like to do it around the holidays where they gift, say, $18,000 a year to each son and daughter and to each grandson or granddaughter. Then you can set up a 529 plan and make a gift to the 529 plan, a college savings plan for a grandson or a granddaughter, let's say. So you've got gifting, you've got donor advised funds, charitable donations, where you get that psychic income, the joy of watching someone else or charity that's near and dear to your heart enjoy the money. Now, again, the grasshoppers, it's a different story. And grasshoppers, again, they're spenders. So it's really counseling grasshoppers to make sure when they're accumulating wealth, they're saving enough. And it's a constant check-in. Hey, how are you doing? Are you putting enough away into the 401k? Now, you've got to get to the point financially where your basic needs are met, and then you can pay yourself first, as we say, and put money away in a 401k. But it is a struggle mentally for grasshoppers to save enough because they just the inclination is to spend. So if you're a grasshopper, you have to set yourself up on a systematic savings plan. And all that really means is a 401k at work where it's automatic. It comes out of your paycheck, the savings every pay period. And you want to put away enough to get the match in your 401k, at least that much. But look, it's 15 to 20% of your income is a good rule of thumb that you should be saving every year. So again, it's a constant battle until it becomes habitual. If you set it and forget it, set up a 401k savings plan where it's automatic, comes out of your paycheck. You don't have to physically do anything. You want to make sure you're invested appropriately in that 401k, but absolutely job one is to get you to 50 to 20% savings. Then when you're in the distribution phase or the retirement phase or the financially independent phase of life, then the trick is to make sure that you don't overspend. So it's a different problems. Remember with ants, it's like you need to spend enough. You've got this wealth, you've accumulated it, enjoy it. Well, with grasshoppers, it's different. And the conversation is, well, maybe slow down. And there are different tools we use and to ensure that grasshoppers don't spend too much. So for instance, no more than 4% of the portfolio value, or just take the dividends every year from the portfolio. So again, that's today's podcast. Ants and grasshoppers, you fall somewhere in between the two probably. But hopefully this gives you an idea of what your money mindset is and maybe a couple of things you can do, pieces of advice to help you out in that regard. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Happiness Your Retirement Program podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy, everyone. Have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.